So we're starting to build a new city, and should probably say a few things. We'll try to make it short and start building soon, only like the necessary things. So I guess I will be building this city a bit differently than, well, at least than I have seen most people build. That is, I'm going like to plan the city before I build it. So in this video, we will only do the planning of where things go. And the reason for that is because I want the city to be built as if it was a historical city. That is, that things are in the places they are, not because someone planned them to be there in the 2000s, but rather because of many years, 1000 years, 500 years of history, where history, events, and the technologies of the past shaped how the city was built, where the everything are, and yeah, I guess plan a bit of history to the city. So yeah, that's about it. I'm not going to build a city in the medieval era or in the industrial era because that's a huge project for its own. So even in the older parts, the parts that was built in the medieval and in the 16, 17, 1800s, I'm only going to place some quick placeholders. And when I do the detailed build, I'm going to build it as it would be today, or at least somewhere on the 20th century. And also another thing that I want to do is to build the city in like uh, I guess a few iterations. Like the first iteration is going to be very rough sketch of the city, very rough details, and we may move and change things quite a lot as we move from iteration to iteration. And like the reason for that is because I think that one of the most fun things about building cities in this game or in what other form that you can find is that you can take, let's say, a old historic neighborhood and just, you know, somewhere in down history, someone decided that a highway should cut through it and I don't know, maybe destroy a few landmarks and definitely destroy many of the old blocks. And then it kind of leaves a scar on the city. And then a few years later, in the historical part of the city, someone builds a skyscraper. And I think this is a very fun thing to do, and it gives cities their uh, interesting look. Really, I think I might go through a few examples just before we start examples from real cities. Okay, so can you recognize this city over here? This is London, quite a well-known historic city that have seen some many layers of redevelopment through the years. It actually started about 2000 years ago as a Roman colony and went through many stages since then, including the 1966 Great Fire that burned much of the city and kind of brought changes to how the city would be built in the future. It went through the Industrial Revolution. It parts of it were destroyed in the Second World War, and right now, I guess there must be a place to highlight it, but I'm just going to point it with the mouse, like the the line that I am tracing with my mouth is basically where the old walls of the city were. That's the reason why the streets in the center of the city look so uh, chaotic and unordered. which really was something that fascinated me when I don't know, first looked at the city on Google Earth. So I went ahead and studied why it is. It is like this because this street plan is mainly 500 or even more years old. And now, unlike many other historical cities, most of the buildings here have been renewed through the years. Of course, we have the skyline of the city of London. The city have a few other skylines. We have the Isle of Dogs, and we have like the other side of the river. But if we zoom down to the buildings themselves, most of them are buildings that, they are not medieval buildings. They are buildings that have been built in the past 150 years. Like, I guess 95% of the buildings here are uh, have been built since the second half of the 18th century. We can see these modern European buildings that preserve some of the shape of older European buildings, but they definitely have in their shapes, in their decorations, in their materials, um, modern use of materials. So that's something else that I would really like to do, this renewal of the city, of the old city center, upon layers of layers in history. And for, if you take a guided tour in London, you probably have like between a few skyscrapers. I remember I saw a video about it. You can suddenly see a church. I think it's right around one of the bridges. A church from the 12th or 13th century that's still standing, but it's hidden behind a new building. And we have here the London Tower, which I don't exactly recall when it was built, but we have the St. Paul Cathedral, which was built in the 16 or 1700s. So it's a mix of history that was built through many, many stages. And if we let's jump to one other city, and yeah, can you guess which city this one is? Um, it's not a tricky question. This is Amsterdam, and of course, Amsterdam has a very unique feature with the canals that form ring around the center of the old city. But these rings are not a natural phenomena, and actually they are not a phenomena that you see in many cities. So the reason why these rings are like this have stories behind them, and if you're interested about it, you can search for the history of Amsterdam. There are, for example, this train station was built on what was once the old harbor of the city during the 19th century. Why would they build this train station on top of the river, blocking the old harbor? This was a consideration that people of that time had to make, and they decided that this was the best option. Why on this part of the city the streets are going the other way? uh, I mean, the city is built around the historic core in, like rings around it with streets and canals between them, and then suddenly you have this weird neighborhood where the grid goes completely the other way around. And that's because during the time that the city developed, uh, the immigration into the city was too large for uh, how fast they built those canals. So all of this was basically illegal immigrants settling on what was once the edge of the city, and all of this area was farmlands, and the layout of the street was the layout of the borders between the farmlands. Maybe it was even canals, I don't know, but it was the borders between the farmlands, and that's why this neighborhood, Jordan, uh, is so different in its plan than others. And cities, real cities, are full of these things. So I want to try to build in City Skylines something that is a bit similar to that. So yeah, maybe as a first thing, that's a workshop map. You can find it. I think it's called Persepone on the Danube. It's a real place, and this is the Danube River as it goes through Bulgaria. And this island is the largest island, I guess, within the Danube. And of course, I'm not going to build a city. It's a fictional world. I don't pretend to build something that will be historically accurate. And of course, not for the history of East Europe, which I don't know much about. So it's going to be a kind of European city in a kind of European fictional world. So yeah, let's delete all the modern infrastructure because we're going to rebuild all of it. Okay, so the reason I chose this map is because I really like the idea of an island. It kind of limits the city, creates a very clear natural border. And that's something nice because managing a full-size city is quite difficult, especially if you give even the tiniest thought about detail. So yeah, the city is mainly going to be on the island. I don't really want to deal with whatever is outside the island. And then we kind of need a reason why the city got built. So, like, usually the common historical reasons for cities to be built is, well, if a place is easy to fortify, then you can build a fort. I think a river, an island on a river should be easy to fortify. However, this island is quite large. Gonna give you the scale of it. So let's choose the tallest building. So this is a modern skyscraper. And as you can see, they are quite small compared to the island. So this island is pretty large. So yeah, nobody is going to just build a wall around all of this unless this is like Constantinople, the greatest city of the, I don't know, Middle Ages. But for founding a new city, you're not going to surround all of this with a wall. So that's definitely not a valid reason. Another reasons it could be that the city is a central trading point. Maybe there are many trade routes, important intersection that goes through the area. And then naturally, you build an inn or some buildings along the intersection, a market for the locals, and it's naturally starting to grow from that point. So I guess this could be an intersection point. Then the Danube River is actually, I'm not sure how easily people of the medieval age could build a bridge over a river as wide as this. But maybe there's a ferry station, and there definitely should be lots of trade going through the river, and probably trade routes crossing the river. So this could be something that will boost the growth of the city, or a reason for us to rationalize the growth of the city. Now, other reasons is cities that were built around churches, around hospitals. So sometimes people will seek the protection or the benefits that comes with living very close to a church, to a monastery. So this could be another reason. And I actually think that maybe we'll go something like a hospital. Of course, hospitals of the medieval age were just places that you put people that didn't know how to do medicine very well. But the establishment, the institution of hospital existed in the medieval ages. At least as far as I know, and I don't know very much. But um, at least in this fictional world, it is so. So I believe maybe uh, the church, of course, church is not a single building. The church is the whole institution of all the churches around the world, going up to the bishops and the archbishops and the pope. So this most powerful organization decided to appoint this island as a hospital island, and basically an island for people that have been rejected from society, outcasts, crazy, mentally ill people, and maybe people that are running away from the law, and designated this area as a sanctuary place for all of these people to live in. There may be like a church institution where sick people would be brought to, but then would be many other settlements for people who ran away to the sanctuary. Now, I think sanctuary cities or sanctuary areas did exist. I may check this out later, but anyway. So let's start with this and let's build it, I don't know, next to this smaller island, because maybe we can build a bridge to connect like this mainland to the island, to the Persepone island. Oh yes, so we call the city Persepone because the original map was called Persine on the Danube, and it sounds kind of similar to Persepone. And then Persephone was, of course, the a Greek goddess or half goddess, I guess. She was a woman, and then she married the god of the underworld, and then she became the queen of the underworld. I hope I'm not talking nonsense because I almost messed up facts, but that's what I remember anyway. So this land could be like have a spiritual uh, status as some kind of an underworld, or like maybe some kind of other world, right? I don't know if it makes sense. In a poetic way, it must make some sense at least. So anyway, I've talked for how long? Let's start building. Yeah, I'm not sure how a hospital in the medieval age would have looked like, but there's probably need to be some buildings for the sick and for the monks and nuns or whatever church people would walk there, and I guess a wooden medieval bridge. We used the vanilla gravel road to connect it to the mainland. Maybe a dock. That's something we can do. Really, right now, what I'm trying to figure out is how the city would develop from this point forward. So, I guess let's not be like exactly synchronous about the time, but which kind of processes would happen over years. So I believe one process is that as the city itself gets more important, more people will be crossing into it from the mainland, which, you know, you can imagine that we have uh, a region of farmlands on this bank of the big river. So people from all that area would probably want to cross into the city, and somewhere along the bridge, actually probably on this side, we would form some kind of a market and uh, buildings that would naturally come and be built around the marketplace. So I don't want to build on this side because I want to limit the spread of the city outside the island so that I will be able to handle the project. So let's pretend that the market would be here. So as kind of the market where people would come with their goods and trade them. And then naturally a few houses would be built. So yeah, the buildings I'm placing are just placeholder buildings to really give us kind of a very rough sense of what would have been here. And like in the examples of London and Amsterdam, in the city itself, we will replace all of it with developments that would come later. But we can imagine some kind of uh, roads going out from the square and developing. Okay, in parallel to the growing of the market town, actually, let's start naming. So this place will get a very descriptive name of Market Island. This area will be known as Medicine. Oh, let's change it to Medicine Church. Yeah, okay. So this would be like the lens of the hospital, and probably like let's put some kind of path to mark the border. So yeah, this could be the lens of the hospital, and probably could be a place where uh, the monks would grow some crops, right? Some lands that monks of the hospital are working. Don't want to really get into more detail than that because it's all going to be replaced very soon. So not a point in building it. Well, I guess just outside the land that is the hospital itself, people will be allowed to settle. So all of this island, well, we said it's a sanctuary island, so people, let's say they can get permits to settle there easily. Okay, and then we will mostly have people settling inside the Persepone island. And usually, I think they do this along like roads. So there are a few roads going through the island, and then people just kind of seemingly in a random way, at least, build their houses along the roads and like the piece of land like behind the house is usually the land that they work. It like the way countrysides looked really changes between countries in Europe because different countries had different laws of who can own land, who can buy land. There were a few formats. Like I think in England there was a format where the countryside used to belong to lords, and then it would be only the farmlands, and the peasants would all live in a town that's like clustered in one place. But in other countries, especially in lands that did not belong to lords, in like kind of the it had some kind of legal system behind it. But in other places, houses would be built along main roads mostly. Let's see if we can find examples online. Yes, okay, so that's a map of London from the year 1560. we can obviously see the extent of the city. And well, if you know the city, you can easily match this with places of today. But really, the main focus is the outskirts of the city. So you can see that even here, some of the land is only farmlands without houses, but there are also places where there are houses both along the river and along some of the countryside roads. Like probably whoever the landlord was, whether it was a noble or the church or the crown, gradually sold these areas to individual peoples who had money to buy it and or maybe rented them the area. But anyway, uh, that's how the kind of suburban sprawl of the late medieval age would look like. Let's see if we can find another example. Yes, okay, so that's another map um, from the 16th century of Paris, if you can recognize some landmarks. And well, let's focus on really how the city looks. So there is a city wall, there is even a canal, or there's a special wall for a canal around the city walls, which I don't remember at the moment. But we can see we have the walls on both sides of the river, and then we have kind of a substantial suburban sprawl outside the walls. So the city inside the walls, of course, is looks pretty dense from this map. Outside the walls, city much less dense, and we can see mostly denser neighborhoods around the gates to the city, which is a natural place because this is where all the traffic and trade would go. And then as you go farther out, you get to the countryside, to this land, which I don't know if it represents pastures or farms or just unwalked land, but you can see that along the main roads, uh, there are kind of stretches of buildings, and then after one line of building, we have the countryside, and yeah, we can see kind of the same phenomena all around the city, and we can see a few churches. Like this building looks like a church, this building, or maybe this one looks like some kind of facility. This looks like a windmill, maybe. This here is large gate. So, like, mainly the main features of the medieval city is the walls, the gates, the suburban sprawl outside the city, which some includes mostly countryside, houses, and churches or kind of other institutions, and the city itself, which is very dense in all sorts of buildings, and can find some churches, some castles and palaces. Yes, along the river, we can see docks. Here we can see river boats parked along the river banks, and sometimes this can be seen also in other cities. Some of the area inside the walls would not be completely built uh, at a certain stage in history. So there would be some pastures and orchards and farmlands even inside the walls of cities. And this is a medieval wall. There will be another set of newer walls that cities would be building really from between the years 1600 and 1800, which would be effective against cannons, but we will get there soon. So yeah, coming back to the city of Persepone, I would assume that, like, even looking at these two examples of London and Paris, we would like to build like dense areas, like the areas inside the walls. Actually, if we like fast forward a few years, the city would grow large enough to afford building walls and important enough to need them. So I think they have the Chinese Great Wall, which is a nice wall asset. So yeah, the city would get its walls, which obviously not, well, not obviously, but most of the walls would not survive to the present day in most cities and in this city as well, but it helps us plan the city, and maybe at some point, some parts of the wall would remain and would become nice historical places, or places that we can build some fun things around them when we get to the 20th and 21st century. So yeah, let's leave a small riverbank outside the walls, maybe. Actually, there were no walls facing the river. That's interesting. So a little bit of walls, but not all along the river. I guess the towers would protect from invasions from the riverside. So yeah, maybe we will build a tower or kind of a fort up on this side and a fort in here. And in order to build those forts, the city would have to be quite rich and quite big. So yeah, I think I'm going to fill most of the market island with, the core of the city. Um, I guess somewhere in the between 1500 and 1600, where the city is really large enough to afford walls. So we're going to need a few more houses. Okay, so I tried filling the whole market island with buildings, and the scale of the city is much larger than I even estimated. Like, this can be almost half of a full city, at least in the scale that you can build in cities skylines. So yeah, going and detailing something like this is going to be a lot of work. So yeah, if we're going to do this city on a large scale, then we will have to build many areas with lower level of detail. Either that, or we're going to have to really scale down the size of the city. And yeah, I don't think we're going to be building all over this island. That's going to be crazy. So anyway, yeah, kind of, let's say this is a snapshot of the city in the year 1600. Um, so along the island, we can see this chaotic and random growth of buildings. I'm actually building only the buildings that not the streets, because like from my experience, it's better for creating the older parts of the city, because that's how older parts were built. Like, usually it would be people just building buildings wherever they could or got permission, and then only later the actual roads would be designated as roads. So it's not the growth of cities, of older cities, is not the same as how we build cities today, where we first plan the road layout and then designate lots of land along the roads. That's not how it happened. So yeah, I'm building the buildings themselves, and but not the roads. At this place, which I have to remind you is only a sketch for the city. So um, yeah, and that's only part of the city because naturally the this side of the river would grow, and what was once only a hospital would become now the heart of the city as demand for this land would grow very much, and the hospital would start selling more and more land to the people. So actually, this square, I wanted to put some large uh, cathedral in it. Not sure I have too many assets at the moment. We'll put this thing for now, but yeah, as the city shapes, maybe we will switch this building or create some custom building. And over here too, let's um, let's create the development on this side of the river too. Actually, I've decided that this side of the city needs walls as well, so let's actually use the border of the, I guess, old hospital. Maybe like this, something like this. Yeah, so this walled area is going to be the other half of the city. So all of this should be kind of densely built. So yeah, let's just fill it and then think about what's next. Okay, so after a lot of work, um, yeah, we have this placeholder for the, I guess, city inside the walls, and I even started doing this kind of suburban sprawl that we saw outside the walls in the historic maps that we saw earlier. Now, I think we need to add a few things now. One of them is I left this area blank because maybe this area is slightly higher. So let's make it around 80 meters tall. And yeah, now this is maybe where some kind of king is sitting. So I'm not sure actually if I have assets that would be good for a castle, but we definitely can make this a king castle. So yeah, that's a king castle. And then the next thing is the other side of the river. Like, I want a good excuse why the city would not grow too much towards this side. So I think a good excuse could be that this place is kind of a cliff. Yes. So let's say this side is a cliff and a forest. So that would be a good reason why the city would not spread too much outside the island. But yeah, right here around where the bridge goes, let's create uh, at least one road that, or a few roads that go to each direction, and just a few houses in here as well, because that would only be natural. But yeah, this part of the city would not grow too much. And I think if we will have some development along this bank is something that can be manageable. Yeah, so that should be enough. I want to sketch out now a bit of the suburban sprawl around the city, create some city gates. Actually, let's decide where the gates would be. So I believe I want to add node here. Here we will have a gate, and maybe here. This looks like a main street, so it would probably lead to a gate. And this here could be a gate as well. And in here, the other gate. So all of these. Let's now, do I have a gate asset? I guess we can use this one for a gate. So yeah, it's kind of, I guess, huge, but uh, it's just a placeholder gate so that we can easily tell where the gates are. And yeah, maybe some of them would be kept as historical sites. And we can replace this placeholder asset with something more custom in the future. Okay, so we got gates. Let's keep on with the rows of houses. So along the gates, we will have some more dense development, but then it would quickly become sparse as we stray away from the gates. So let's do this for all the gates. Here we have some kind of, I don't know, maybe a main intersection. So there will be more development around here. And I want a better name for, so that we can refer to all the part of the city inside the walls on this bank of the river. So let's first mark all the area, and I think I will call it Sanctuary City. One thing that is missing is kind of a big cathedral. I may use this building, and it should be in a central place, like next to a central square. And well, the bridge, the old hospital, all of these are central places. I think I will place it here. So let's delete the existing buildings. Maybe oriented like this, so that we can have this circular part of the building facing the river. It can make for nice views and even closer to the river. Let's delete this one. And we have this tower over here, so that's going to be cool. And in the middle of the square, let's say we have the old church. And like all of this area is going to be the main square of the city. I think that's going to be nice for the future. So let's just build the line of buildings. Yes, so we're going to call this area Hospital Square, because This is the main square of the city, and this is where the old hospital was. And now we have a newer cathedral in here, and who knows, maybe we will have even more additions to this square as the centuries fly by. And I don't think I have good assets for the castle, so maybe I'm going to leave the king's castle for the next time. But that's, I guess, a snapshot of the city in a very rough sketch of it, as it is in the, say, 16th century. There is a walled, two walled parts of the city, one in the main Persepone island and another in the market island. We have a bridge connecting to the mainland. We have, I guess, docks along the river, a very small extension of the city on this side, which is kind of blocked by the cliffs along the river and a forest in it. We have place reserved for a castle or a palace for some king, and we have a small suburban sprawl, and like we can imagine that this is all farmlands around the city, and maybe there are some smaller towns dotted around the larger island. So yeah, that's, I think, a good place to stop this video. And in the next one, let's try to, if we are now in the year 1600, progress forward towards the 1800s, hopefully, and keep planning how the city would have grown historically. So if anyone has watched to this point, I guess thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and that's it for now.